Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for the May wrap up. Now, some of the books, I read a lot more than 3 books, and one of these books I didn't even finish that I showed you on the thumbnail. Hopefully, thumbnail. Most of them are library books. So, a lot of the books I read were library books, so I don't have them in my possession anymore because the library finally opened up completely back in April. So I went a little library crazy and started borrowing a lot of books again. I did limit myself to 3 books per visit, but then I got a little stressed out because one of the books I borrowed was Discovery of Witches, and that one is a bit that one is 500 plus pages. So I was stressing myself out because I want to get the library. When I get a library book, I want to get that one done first. But then the problem is if I keep getting books, then I'm going to neglect my own personal collection. So I have to stop and take a step back, and now I think I might buy Discovery Witches, and I'm buying the trilogy because I did enjoy that book. So that was one of the books I did read this month. I just didn't finish it. I got to chapter 16, so I only got this much into the book. But anyway, so let me start with one of the library books, and that is Never Let Me Go by Kazu Ishiguro. This is my first Kazu Ishiguro book. I am a little familiar with the what is it called? The one about the butler. I already forgot what it was called. I'm familiar with that one because that one is I have the movie version of that movie adaptation starring Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson. I have that one. And so I'm a little more familiar with that one, which I did not realize that was based on a book. Just but anyway, so I'm a little familiar with that one. So I got Never Let Me Go, which is about our main character Kathy, who is a carer, and she's remembering her time at school, at the boarding school she used to go to, with her 2 best friends, Tommy and Ruth, in her complicated relationship with them. And there's something about the school that they go to and about their lives that's a little bit off. It's not as creepy and unsettling as Catherine House was, but it's still it's a little sad, and you get these sad vibes from their situation, like something's that they don't have a normal, what is considered normal life outside of their and they're very isolated, and there's almost a whimsical feel to it where they go to school and stuff, and an otherworldly feel to it. And so it's kind of a mystery because you slowly piece together and try to figure out what their situation is, because Kathy wants to know. Kathy knows that something's not completely right, and she wants to understand it. And meanwhile, she has this very complicated relationship with Ruth and Tommy. And I think there's a bit of a love triangle there. There was a bit of a love triangle. It's not an obvious one. It's not like a YA novel love triangle. But it was there. Unfortunately, I feel like Tommy was a bit of a pushover and just would go with the flow and stuff. And he wasn't very active. He wasn't an active participant in the love triangle. He was just a good friend, While Ruth is the most interesting because she is, on the one hand, you kind of see that she is a caring friend and she wants to help you out, but then on the other times you just want to slap her and shake her because she can be really mean. And if Kathy would try to call her out on her bullshit, Ruthie would fire back and and call out Kathy on her supposed bullshit, and Kathy would feel bad and be like, oh, well, she's right, and I should have been a little more understanding. And once again, it's always Kathy who's the problem. It's always Kathy's fault. And and Ruthie's just a very selfish person. And the story would be interesting if it was Ruthie's story. I'd be curious what she would think, and also what was she doing later in life when they leave the boarding school. I'd be curious about that too. There's sometimes I feel like characters like that don't work as main characters, but other times I think they can be really interesting. At first, a little off topic here, but I remember watching Vampire Diaries, and I remember watching these interviews with the screenwriter and the screenwriters, and she was saying how the things that they changed and how they changed the main character Elena's personality. She's a lot more like a mean, snobby girl in the show. In the books, but then the show, she's actually likable, like, which a lot, writers, screenwriters believe that you gotta make a character more likable, because in books you can get away with the main character, you can almost get away with the main character not being likable, not being very nice. But you almost have to make them likable. Like in The Circle, for instance, they changed her too, which in that case it kind of bothered me. I did not like that because her personality was kind of why she was such an easy target for the Circle people and the company and stuff. But, so in Vampire Diaries, I was thinking, oh, it was so much more interesting to see her, how she, to see her being that way and not being, like, automatically this nice girl and likable and, woe is me and poor me and, like, but at the same time, oh, very sweet and a good friend and a good girlfriend and stuff, and also always worried about what other people think and stuff like that, but not in a vain kind of way, but in a, I want to be a good friend and a good girlfriend and all that. But then I watched a vlog of, I think it was Irish Reader, who was rereading this books for the first. I think it was his first time reading the books because he liked the show, and I don't know if it was how he did it or maybe it was just how the character was written. I think it was how the character was written. I didn't like Elena, and I'm like, I'm so glad they changed her in the show because she was so annoying in the books, going by, But anyway. So I think it would be kind of interesting to see Ruth lead, but at the moment I think so, but then I don't know yet. Maybe it wouldn't work. It's also a very bittersweet book, and it's very bittersweet. I like the writing. And it was good. I definitely want to check out some of his other books. Like the one, I might read the one about the butler. I might want to read that one, which I wish I could think of. Remains of the Day. That's what it's called. Remains of the Day. I might want to read that one. And I have thought about getting Clara and the Sun, but I might wait until it comes out in paperback or if it's at the library. Which hopefully that one will actually go to the library. So I read that one. So after that one, I finished The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, which I talked about in my May book haul. I got the second book from Thrift Books. So this is Asian-inspired fantasy, and the first part takes place at a school, and the second part is a war. So our main character is Rin, and she is trying to, her parents are dead, her biological parents, so she lives with foster parents who own a shop, which I think sells drugs, and to avoid them signing her off to marriage, she applies to a very prestigious military academy, which you have to pass this test, which of course she passes the really hard test. But when she gets there, she experiences a lot of prejudice because of her darker skin and that she's not rich, so she didn't get the same training a lot of the kids at the school did. In fact, when she gets there, they don't believe her and they think she cheated at first. And eventually she gets kicked out of one of her classes, and so the professors won't take her on as a student, won't teach her the things that she needs to know, so she kind of has to learn it on her own. And then one of the professors, who's also kind of ridiculed and not taken seriously, in fact, a lot of people think what he teaches shouldn't even be in the curriculum anymore, because it's more of older form of the martial arts, and it's magic, basically. But he sees Ren, and he sees potential in her, and unfortunately, Rin agrees to be a student because he can teach her things that the other professors won't teach her. and she's kind of seduced by the magic and learning the magic, and she also eventually realizes at one point in the story that she has a sort of connection to the magic that she needs to learn how to control or harness. And so and he has all these eccentric methods of learning. Like one of my favorite thing that he teaches her is she has to carry this baby piglet up a mountain to get it to drink a certain kind of water, a special water on the mountain, and she has to do it until the piglet is no longer a piglet but a big fat fully grown pig, and she has to carry it up the mountain every day. That's one of his lessons, which that's one of my favorite. Like, I love that trope of a mentor or a professor teaching you in a way that you don't understand and you don't see how this applies until later. And you fight this person, but they're just like, I don't care. You can do what you want. If you don't want to take me seriously, take my methods of learning seriously, then fine, walk away. But but you're also like, no, I need to learn this. And if I have to go through all this crap, then I'll go through all this crap. And then, like I said, the second half is war. And in fact, Rin becomes friends or at least allies with a lot of the people that bullied her and made fun of her and were prejudiced towards her back during her school days. And we focus more, like, we start doing more with the magic in the second half of the book. The book looks at, and what's interesting is what the book looks at is morality, and how in war sometimes you have to do the ugly thing and the thing that not everybody likes and is not the very nice thing. And it's a very messy, it's not neat and clean book. It's very mature and very ugly and shows the ugly side of war, that, you know, war is not about dying in glory. Like, they glorify war a lot, but it can get ugly and messy. And there's another book that I read, which, yeah, that's the next one I finished, also talks about war and doesn't necessarily glorify it either. I also love the magic system is kind of cool, how basically it's drug-induced magic. Like, these characters have to do drugs and get high to connect with their gods and to do magic. And some people can become a vessel for the gods. It also looks at the relationship between mortals and gods, and how they are so powerful and they don't care about humanity and they can slaughter humanity, but they use humans to do that. And it's like, well, we may be able to do that, but we're not the bad guys because you made the choice. You chose to do this. We don't force your hand. We're not puppet masters. You make the choice to do this kind of thing. So it's a very interesting thing to consider. But it also makes you, like, sometimes antagonists that are like that, you hate them because part of you wonders in a way that they're right, but the part of you wants to be like, no, you knew how stupid I was. You knew how desperate I was, so you took advantage. I mean, even Rumpelstiltskin on Once Upon a Time is kind of like that. You know? He took advantage. Of course, someone took advantage of him and manipulated him. So as the Dark One, he takes advantage of other people and manipulates them. And knows he relies on their desperation in the series, so, yeah, so you can like, it kind of is similar, like, even though, but at the same time, someone took advantage of him and corrupted him and made him that way. So it's like a vicious cycle, and it's hard to, like, and it's one of those, what came first, chicken or the egg kind of scenario, where it's like, so it's just it's definitely very interesting looking at that. Okay, and like another Asian book I read this month, this made me a little hungry, because they were talking about food in the book, a little bit, like, before they go to war, because they live on, the food is not great on the when they're in the barracks and stuff like that, but outside of that, when she goes to one of her college classmates, she goes with him to his home, and talking about food and stuff, it smells good. So yep, and I'm gonna jump in the second Dragon Republic soon. I don't know when, but maybe I'll jump into it in June. I don't know. But yeah, this was really good. I really liked it. And okay, so now I'm gonna talk about The Archer's Tale, library book, my first Bernard Cornwell, or Cornwell. I don't know if it's Cornwell or Cornwell. I don't remember. But well, I said Cornwall, so I'm assuming it's Cornwall. This is my first one. I didn't attempt to read The Fort, and that might have just been bad timing on my part. I just wasn't in the mood when I read it. So maybe I could recheck it again once they start using library again. But The Archer's Tale, is during the 100 Years' War, I think right before the 100 Years' War. So a war between England and France, I think. I'm not a historian. I'm not a historical expert, but I'm just assuming because the war was between England and France in the book. And our main character is Thomas from a little town of Hookton, and his town is invaded by the French. And a powerful religious relic is stolen from his town, and he vows as a young boy, probably a preteen or a teenager, that he's going to get it back and get revenge on those who killed his father, and get back what was, But over time, he ends up joining the English army, the British army, and kind of moves on from it. But this father is the only reminder of his vow, his oath, that he promised to his, to get the relic and get revenge for his family. Unfortunately, he gets kicked out of the British Army in the book, and because he causes trouble with a rival. There's trouble that's caused with a rival, and he ends up I can't remember where. And along the way, he meets this French woman who's an aristocrat. He kind of saves her life from the said rival, and he falls in love with her, but she basically ditches him for a more upper class person. And it's about his journey and how he eventually leading him back to the relic, getting revenge and getting the relic back. I always like stories that are kind of I don't seek them out enough, but I do like the idea of stories that have to do with the Holy Grail and stuff like that. I always think those are really interesting, and that's part of why, some of the Dan Brown books kind of deal with that kind of stuff. I think that's why I liked those. It's interesting, the historical mysteries, mysteries about our past and stuff, and some of them actually potentially being true, are always intrigue me. Not just but this was really fun. The only downside is that even though, I'm kind of moving on from the romance department, I still like romance in my stories, and I felt like the romance department was lacking. But of course, I understand that Cornwall was focusing more on Thomas's adventure and finding and getting revenge for Hookton, and finding this holy relic that might be part of the Holy Grail and all that, and the war. Bernard Cornwell knows how to write wars and battle scenes and stuff like that. That was his main focus, so I get that. I understand that. But I kind of was a little disappointed in the war, and then the endgame romance was very it just, all of a sudden it just happened. we didn't really get to see it develop. And then the female character, I feel like, was underdeveloped too. We didn't get enough of her character. Maybe if the book was longer, I mean, who knows, maybe Cornwall didn't feel comfortable. I can never remember. Cornwall, maybe he was not comfortable with writing that kind of stuff, and or he just didn't want to focus on that, which is fine. I get that. That was not his main focus. It's just, as you know, I can admit, it is not entirely wrong when they say female writer. There are a lot of female readers who like that kind of stuff, and I still kind of like it in there, you know. I don't want it to take over the plot and to dominate the plot, but I wanted it a little more developed. That was the only downside. But other than that, the book was great. It was an amazing book. Like, if you like historical war stories, you know, that are exciting and action-packed and have a little bit of mystery, especially if it's, you know, and have talk about the whole things like the Holy Grail and the Knights Templar, then I think you would like this. He's a good author. I mean, and he writes a bunch of stuff too. I mean, unfortunately, my library is lacking. It does have, you know, it has his works, but it didn't even have the second book of this trilogy, which was like, what the heck? You know, I don't understand. I mean, even our librarian Terry, was a little surprised by that, but then both her and Melissa, the other librarian, were like, you know, sometimes the book, if it's not as popular, because we have a smaller library, we have to get rid of some books, which I totally understand, you know, it's just a little disappointed. Now I tried to look at other multiple places, and I guess I'm just never going to read the rest of the trilogy, because I feel like I can't just read the third one, because the third one I saw there, but I didn't see the second one, which, you know, so it's like, I don't know if I'll ever read it. But I'm not, like, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I'm not, like, desperate to read it, you know, it's not going to be the end of the world for me if I don't. But he is a good author, and I am kind of interested in reading more of his work. But like I said, I'm not desperate. And who knows, maybe I'll get lucky at some point. Okay, so next is... Okay, finally, a book that I have. Next is Pachinko by, Min-Jin Lee. This takes place in Japan, but the main characters are Korean. And the first part of the book is in Korea. And, like, some of the people I've heard talk about that introduced me to this book are Sean the Book Maniac and a couple other people. He's the one I remember because, like I said, I remember him having very mixed feelings. Now, me on the other hand, I'm like a book hoe. I'll like not almost anything, but it doesn't take a lot to please me when it comes to books. I mean, and if it's a book that I know I'm not gonna like, I just won't get it. And maybe I'll wait until I'm more interested in it. But anyway, so this is, like I said, it takes place mostly in Japan. We have our main character, a young Korean woman named Sunja, which I hope I'm saying that right. And she is, it's just her and her mom. Her dad passed away, but he was very, you know, and they own a boarding house in Korea. And one day, she meets this man who saves her from these boys that are harassing her because she's Korean. I think the whole book does take place in Japan. Well, I don't know. I don't know the whole history of Japan and Korea. I just know that Japan seemed like buttholes at this time. And these Japanese boys are harassing her, so this handsome rich man saves her life, and they start spending time together, they fall in love, but then she finds out that he is married. After she gets pregnant and tells him that she's pregnant, she finds out he's married, and he won't marry her because of that, obviously, and unless he wants to divorce his wife, which he's not going to do that. And the last thing she wants to do is become his mistress, which that's what he offers to her, to be his mistress, because in his mind, oh, I'm taking care of you guys, and I have a son now. And because his actual wife just gave him daughters, so of course, having a son is the most important thing in the world. So he's like, in his mind, he's thinking, I'll take care of you guys, and I'll have a son, but that's the last thing she wants. And eventually, this kindly, sickly, let me see what they, okay, minister, they call him a minister. There's so many different terms for, people who preach the word of God. I don't ever remember which is which. Like, I think we, as Christians, we have a pastor. And the rabbi, of course, the Jewish faith, their person who talks about God and stuff and preaches. Their preacher's a rabbi, and then I think Catholics it's a preacher, or Southern Baptist. But anyway, this kindly minister Isaac offers her a marriage, and she, knowing her situation, desperate and seeing that this guy is very kind to her, she agrees. And they move in, they get married and move in with his brother and his brother and his wife. And she ends up she has these children, and they are, they have all these, they have to do a lot to make money. They're not very well off, and of course, they are living in a world where Japan has taken over and has oppressed the Koreans. There's prejudice against them. They're seen as dirty Koreans and smelly Koreans. We don't like you. And you have to learn Japanese, and you have to do things the Japanese way, and they have to keep them themselves. And Sunja and her sister-in-law have to work. They have to sell candy at the local market. They have to sell candy and kimchi at a local market, and it's all about their lives, and it's about watching her two sons, because she has two sons, and watching them grow up and their experiences with all this horrible prejudice they go through, and how it affects both of them very differently. And again, just like the poppy war, there's a bit of talk of food that makes me hungry, even though I gotta admit, I'm not a fan of kimchi. I've had it before. I had it a long time ago though, so I might change, but just going by the smell, I don't know if I would like kimchi. I probably still wouldn't like it, but I still, the book still made me hungry, even though I don't like kimchi. But it's such an interesting look at their life and the horrors that they go through, because Japan got so greedy, and like Japan is the equivalent to Germany at this time, and I don't know what's going. I gotta admit, I don't know what's going on with them now, but I know they're kind of experiencing the Civil War between North and South Korea. Like, it's divided between North and South, and one of them is kind of the bad one, and then the other one is the good one, which is simplifying it. But it's so sad, but there are glimmers of happiness and hope. And her oldest boy, her previous lover, which I didn't say his name was Hansu, the rich dude. Hansu's son, biological child, he is very smart, and he loves reading, so there's mentions of Dickens, and, in this book, like, he loves Dickens. So I probably kind of related to him the most as far as that aspect, his passion for learning and knowledge and stuff, but the other stuff I didn't relate to. His, like, I'm very fortunate not to experience a lot of prejudice in my life. I don't experience any prejudice, actually. I don't even know if I experience any sexism as a woman. I don't think I've ever seen, or at least not that I'm aware of. But it's just so sad to see what they go through, all because they're Korean. And the Japanese think themselves superior and think that they're better than the Koreans. And they just continuously spread hate. And the kids that bullied these two boys, and bullied Sunshine when she was a young girl and would go to the market. They don't understand. They don't know what they're talking. They don't know why. They just do it because their parents do it. They're told by their parents. So it's just really sad. And there's very few happy moments in this book, but there are glimmers of happiness. I also like that it's multi-generation, which I feel like you get that a lot with Asian novels. Like Amy Tan's books are very much like that too. Especially she focuses a lot on mother-daughter relationships. And this focuses on more on family, in a little bit of relationships between men and women as well, and the relationships between mothers and sons. It's a lot, a big focus. I also thought the pachinko parlor, which I didn't understand why, Noah, his name is, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that's what it looks like. The oldest boy is like, how he's like, I don't want, granted, I guess because it's gambling, it's immoral and stuff like that. It's seen as immoral. But, I mean, here in America, people gamble all the time. My grandma gambles. In fact, both my grandmas technically, but one of them just does the lottery cards, and scratches out and hopes she wins. The other one actually will go to casinos and stuff. And my dad and my uncles, when we bid on cruises, they'd gone to casinos and won big. My uncle, so to me, gambling, yeah, I'm never gonna gamble. I think it's too risky, but it's not, I feel like you're not committing a crime. But, I mean, this is a different time period, and I don't understand, but I gotta admit, I don't understand Noah's reaction to pachinko, which is a gambling den, essentially. And it's like the American casinos, but with pinball. That's how they describe it when I looked it up, after I read this, it's like pinball. Or, like, and that's what his younger brother, who I always forget his name, he ends up, Mazu, I don't know if I'm saying that one right. He becomes a manager of pachinko parlors as he gets older, when he becomes an adult. It's so interesting to see their opposite perspectives on the situation. Like, Mazus he's angry about it, but he doesn't let it get to him, and he fights back. He's not afraid to fight back. While, Noah is more, he kind of prefers to blend in, and he doesn't want to deal with it. And it really hurts him. He's a lot more sensitive than his brother. Or at least he doesn't get angry. He just gets, it hurts him emotionally. And so he isolates himself from his own heritage. He tries to isolate himself from his heritage, or just try to hide who he is because of the horrors of these, just because they're Korean. While Mazus gets angry, and like I said, he gets angry. He fights back. He's like, I don't care what these people think. This is who I am. Let them treat me horribly. I'm not a coward. So it's very interesting to look, and you can kind of understand both points of view. Like, you can understand why it's not easy to stand up and fight back, especially when you experience so much hate, because of your culture, because of where you come from. It's not an easy thing to do. But there are some people, but it's also understandable to get angry and want to fight back. And you gotta admire Mazus for doing that. But you can also understand Noah for being, it's not easy to do. I feel like you can't really judge him for it. I didn't like Hans. I liked everyone else. I just did not like Hansu. He was just always very selfish. And he was like, well, he's my son, so I have the right to him. It's like, you lost that privilege when you revealed to her, you hooked up with her and made her fall in love with you, got her to fall in love with you, when you were married. And it's like, which it made me think about, it actually made me think of Jane Eyre a little bit. It was kind of a similar situation. But I don't know, I kind of feel more bad for, Rochester than Hansu, in all honesty, because I think, Rochester is a little more sympathetic. And it's not like his wife was out in the open. He wasn't parading, it wasn't, no one else knew about her except for his, his brother-in-law and his, while everyone knew that Hansu was married. And she didn't even know that, So it's kind of similar, but I gotta admit, I feel more sympathetic for Rochester. It's very loud, so don't yell at me and be like, how can you feel sorry for Rochester? If any of you happen to be readers of Jane Eyre, okay? Don't yell at me. I'm not saying I feel a lot about him, and I'm not excusing it. I just kind of feel more sympathy, a tiny bit more sympathy for him than Hansu. And I think Hansu is a little more selfish, So, yep, I really liked it. I liked the writing. And I can see, I think, when I saw in the book Maniacs criticism, what you didn't spend a lot of time with the characters. You would get to know the characters, but then all of a sudden you would be with a new group of characters. So it was almost not long enough because it didn't go too in depth with a lot of people. It did go in depth, but not enough. I definitely see that criticism. Okay, so I read that one, and then next one was a library book, Magic for Liars. Samantha Galley, I think the author. This is I wasn't sure if it would be full because it wasn't completely fantasy, But this book takes place as another book that takes place at a boarding school, and our main character is a PI. Her sister was discovered to have magic, so she goes to a magic school. While our main character, Ivy, never discovered magic. Never got magic. So it kind of made her a little bitter. So her relationship with her sister, whose name I forget at the moment, isn't very good. It's very rocky and stuff, and not in a good place. And she is asked to investigate a murder at the said school where her sister works as a teacher. And it turns out actually the woman that was murdered was her sister's girlfriend. So it's all about her investigating that. And investigating the murder, and it's her first murder investigation. And it's all about her complicated relationship with her sister while she's trying to solve the murder of her sister's girlfriend. And she even potentially gets, a love interest. And it was really interesting. It had a kind of film noir feel to the story. I feel like the magic was a little underdeveloped. I feel like we didn't really get to know, and I almost wanted to know more about the school because I'm a fantasy reader first and foremost. So I want to know more about the interesting magic, and the author never really takes the time to explain the magic. It just is there, which I guess because of the story and because of the kind of story it was, she didn't want to take the time to explain it. I also like how as someone who was a younger sister, I do like how the emotional core of the story is the relationship between these two sisters, and how how this whole thing about one sister being magical and one not. And there's also a subplot of of the mom getting cancer, and the sister with magic didn't save her. And that's part of her, Ivy's, bitterness towards her sister. Like I said, there was a little bit of a romance in the story. I kind of liked the love interest. Although towards the end I didn't like him as much anymore. But like I said, that wasn't the main plot thing. I was more interested in the two characters, the two siblings, the brother and sister that were kind of at the root of the mystery. They were kind of in some way involved in the murder and everything. And Ivy's interaction with them are very interesting. You have the boy, the brother, who's very obsessed with this prophecy and that he's the chosen one, and he's so obsessed with that and trying to live up to being the chosen one and stuff. And how Ivy, inside her head, she's thinking how when she was in high school, she would have liked him and would have had a crush on him, would have been fascinated by him and worshipped him and stuff like that. And then you have the relationship, his sister, who is kind of that mean girl. She's kind of like the Regina George of this school, but 10 times worse because she has magic. And she's very manipulative and stuff like that. And just that, I would love to see a story. Like, I feel like they were a cross between, they also kind of reminded me of, in Cruel Intentions, the two, Sebastian and I can't remember Sarah Michelle Gellar's character's name, but they kind of reminded me of that, of those two a little bit as well. And I would love to get a story about them. That would have been really interesting to expand if she explained the world a little bit more, the magic aspect of the world a little bit more. But of course, that's because I'm a fantasy fan first and foremost. It's a very fast-paced novel, it does have a lot of action, it's a mystery, like I said, it reads like a film noir, so it's not as action-packed or even as gory, and then there is a bit of it, like, how they describe the dead body and stuff like that. So I liked this book. It wasn't like the best book ever, but I had a fun time with it. So that was the last book I finished. Because I ended up DNFing Magic for Liars. I mean, not Magic. That is Magic for Liars. I ended up DNFing, or I ended up returning Discovering Witches, to the library because I'm not DNFing it. I want to buy it. And then I started reading this, but I haven't finished it, and that is Wild Swans. And it's a memoir about, these three generations, the author, her mother, and her grandmother, and what they go through and stuff. And it reminded me of Pachinko, except for it's the Chinese side of that whole story, because it takes place around the same time period. And it does talk about stuff I'm familiar with, but now we're at a point where the whole communist situation and all that, and I only knew a little bit about that. So I'm liking it. It's long, and but I do want to read a little bit more of this book, and I ideally want to read a little bit more before I'm probably not gonna finish it, but I want to read a little bit more. I know I'm not gonna finish it in June because I'm gonna probably want to put it aside again at some point. I mean soon, but I do want to read a few more chapters. But it's an easy read, and it's just a very interesting topic. Just like in this time period and what these women go through. It's very sad. And I'm just glad I'm Asian American and not from these countries. They're beautiful countries, but the hardships that people in Korea and China go through during this time period and it's still not ideal, So I'm just glad I'm Asian American and I was, and didn't have to go through all these horrors that these people go through. Although our political economy is not doing that. Our political, we're not doing that ideal anymore. There's a lot of, tension and a lot of drama right now in our political climate right now. It's still not as bad as this, but it's getting there. Although I'm one of the privileged, so. But yeah, this it's really good so far. It's just, I have to be in the right mood for it. So I'm definitely gonna read a little bit more in June of this. Okay, so, now let's talk about some of the books that I'm kind of reading right now, but I probably won't finish. Dang it. I did decide to DNF Dreamcatcher. There were some, that was one of those situations where I just wasn't feeling the story, so I looked at Goodreads reviews, and the ones that are 3 stars or lower, they talked about there were some weird things, and it was funny that some reviewers pointed out that One review said, "Good news, it's not a ripoff of It, but it is a ripoff of Tommyknockers." Like he rehashed the story in which it's which I thought was kind of funny because it's all three of those novels are King's work. But just looking at reviews and finding out some of the things that happened in the story was a little weird and just a little bit too much for me. And I'm picky with my alien stories, you know. So finally decided to pick up this one, Under the Dome, which obviously I'm not gotten very far into this book. You know, I'm just at the point where the people, the characters are discovering the dome has settled on them. And there was one scene that was really dramatic that just happened where this guy who's really angry at this woman beats her up for some reason. I don't know if it was, I don't remember, I don't think we were told why. We just know that he's really angry and he's like, she crossed the line, how dare she, and what's wrong with her, And the guy, for some reason, is a very sexist man, very much a pig, sexist pig, so I'm going to read a little bit more, which I love this size, even though it still weighs like a hardback, it still weighs a bit. I like it. And then, so I'm more to talk about with these two. So finally got back to reading the Pickwick Papers by Dickens. I'm definitely getting into a little bit more. You can see I'm almost done with it. I got all that left. It's still kind of hard to follow, though, to figure out what exactly is going on. Like, I don't understand, there's a point when Daniel Pickwick is on trial, and I don't remember why. I don't understand why he's on trial. I mean, they do explain it, but I don't remember if what happened in that scene or not, so I don't know if he's guilty or not. But, anyway, so I picked that up again. I want to, finish it, but I probably won't finish it by May. I mean, by the end of May, because it's the 29th. So, I could try, but I'm filming 2 videos right now, so I don't think I will. And then I gotta, I'm gonna go running, of course, unless my parents suggest going to the pool again this evening, unless it rains, because we might get rain. So yep, I'm working on that one. And then I'm also working on the second book. This is more to apply to my, challenge to get a lot of series finished. And, I just recently uploaded that, my summer reading where all the books from series I want to read the next book. Although I just realized I think I already did a similar kind of video earlier this year. So it's a bit of a, it's just like, damn it, I already filmed this kind of video. I don't even think how much, I don't know how, even if it's different in any way at all, but, so this is from a trilogy, the Bartemius trilogy, which I don't know if I'm saying that the second book, although now there is a 4th book. This is about a boy magician, Nathaniel, and in the first book, he wants revenge for being humiliated by his master and his master's colleague. And so he summons a djinn, Bartemius. And Bartemius is snarky and sarcastic. He doesn't like humans. He doesn't have any respect for them. And he's been around for years, so he knows and understands a lot about the world around them. And he causes a lot of trouble for Nathaniel. And while the second one is he is a couple years older in this second one, he once again has to summon Bartemius. And his life is a little bit better, but not much. Because all the adults still treat him like he's just a kid and are disrespectful to him. And Nathaniel's a bit hot-headed and stubborn and he doesn't, and I'm noticing in this book, even more so than the first book, that he kind of has that superior attitude, thinking he's better than everybody else. And it's worse because there's a chance they can still, he's still young enough to be molded. into some, to a certain way of thinking. He's still vulnerable enough. And I think, Bartemius compares him to some of the other, the other wizards and magicians, and say he's not any better than them. And of course, Nathaniel's just ignoring him and doesn't want to admit that Bartemius may have a point. So he's got a lot to do. And now, one thing I noticed is that there are vibes. Some of the conflict reminds me a little bit of the conflict in Falcon and Winter Soldier, except for it's magic instead of superheroes and government controlling superheroes, and like the whole half the population was erased in Endgame, was erased, and now they're all back, and it's how to deal with that, the aftermath of that, complicated immigration and all that. This one, it's more through the eyes of, we're dealing with magic. Not, I still love Bartemius' character. This is such a fun series, and I would say it's like upper middle grade going into YA, younger YA. I feel like that's the vibes I'm getting from this book, this trilogy. It's really fun and such a colorful series. I love Bartemius' character, although there are times when he's critical of humanity, of mortals and humans. I'm like, okay, we're not that bad. It's like, no, we're not that stupid either. I get a little defensive. I don't know what time period this takes place. I'm a little confused because at first I thought it was historical, like back in 1800s or something, but then they mentioned cars and stuff like that, so I think it's early 20th century, at least as far as the time period. But anyway, I like the writing. It's very fun. The writing and even some of the aspects of the plot remind me a lot of Cassandra Clare's The Shadowhunter Saga a little bit. But yeah, this is really fun. Okay, so that's what I'm currently reading, although I haven't picked up Under the Dome in a while, so I probably won't get back to that until June. Because I'm trying to get as much progress in those other two books. And I forgot another book that I got this month. I think I got it in May. That I wanted to show you guys. So I had a copy of a mass market copy of this book. But at the time, I DNF'd it and decided not to get it. But I guess it wasn't permanently DNF because I saw it in this edition and was like, I'm gonna buy it. Because I hear a lot of positives about it and how fun this classic is, and I'm loving his other book, his other most famous work, The Count of Monte Cristo. Is just taking me a long time to read because it's over 1,000 pages long, and there are parts in the book that are very slow moving, and sometimes I'm just not in the mood for it. So I bought Three Musketeers in this Barnes & Noble Classics editions, which, I'm a fan of these. I love these, with the, again, colors, and there's the painting in the middle and stuff like that. So this is basically about the French, the Musketeers are kind of like the protectors of the French king, and our main character, D'Artagnan, wants nothing more than to be a musketeer. And he decides to join, but Carnot Richelieu takes over and dispatches and has the musketeers dispatched when D'Artagnan arrives. And he accidentally bumps into three of the most famous musketeers, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, and and they're kind of bitter about the situation, and they all pick a fight with anybody, essentially. So there's D'Artagnan, who is very hot-headed and stubborn, finds himself in the middle of the duel with these three musketeers, not realizing they're musketeers. Which I only remember because I've seen the Disney movie a million times. Which, actually, though, I got rid of it recently because I don't know if I'm gonna ever watch it again. Although now I'm wondering if I should change my mind about that. Well, it is a Disney movie, so it'll probably be on Disney Plus anyway. So, this is a really fun, swashbuckling story. I think I'm gonna give it another shot. Besides, I think part of the problem is the mass market. It's hard for me to read mass markets. Although some of my books, like my copy of, Les Miserables is mass market. So I don't know if I am regretting that, but it was the best one, and the cover was the most appealing, and it was unabridged. So, like, it's, so yeah, I forgot to mention that in my book haul. Okay, so that is how my reading went in May. So I would love to know how your reading went this month, back in for May. How your reading went? Did you participate in the Asian Readathon? What did you read for that? If you did, what did you read for that readathon? I'm sure you probably, and maybe you did better than I did with that readathon. My problem is when I have a theme. I think my problem is when I have a theme or like a certain kinds of books I need to read. If I like try to do that, then it doesn't work out because I'll get into it for a little while and then I fall through with it. It doesn't go well. So if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't. Click the bell notification below to see when I post new videos. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!